right? So that's...
Hi, this is Sid. I'm the CEO and co-founder here at GitLab, and I'm here with Yura, and we're going to talk today about how to make remote work successful. Yura, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Sid. My name is Yura Riphyak. I'm co-founder of a company called YouTeam. We've been in winter 18 batch of Y Combinator, and we are a marketplace for hiring software development teams. So remote teams is very familiar topic for me. That's why I'm doing blog about this, and I'm actually going to put together a book called Remote Stories of Success within about a year. So that's what I asked for this interview, and yeah, Sid, thanks for sharing your experience. Let's start with one thing. The companies who achieved massive success with distributed teams very often put a lot of effort evangelizing this approach, right? GitLab has the famous remote manifesto, the handbook, and these video streams. Zapier has its own huge guide on remote work. Like Jason Fried of Basecamp published a book on remote work. Why do you feel this is important to promote this specific side of your company experience?
Yeah, I think it's, I want to see the world do more remote. When I see other companies do co-located and have everyone in airplanes the whole time, I cringe a bit. I think it's inefficient. The handbook is not meant as a promotional tool. It's meant as a way to quickly scale the company. We kind of double every year. So most of the people that will be here in a year are not at the company right now. So if you implement a new process or you make a change, you should optimize for the people who aren't at the company. So you can't send an email because you don't have the email of all those new people yet. So the only way to do it is through a handbook. So that's why we made that such a focus of us.
So it was your internal tool initially, but then you decided to publish it so like other companies can also benefit from this knowledge.
That wasn't really the reason why we're so transparent. The reason we're transparent is because the company was created after an open source project. So GitLab, the open source project was there, and then the company came about. What I frequently saw is that doesn't turn out right. Most companies kind of lose the community they originated from. And part of that is that the community doesn't understand what's happening in the company. There's no visibility into it, and they cannot see how the company is thinking. So that's why we decided to be a very transparent company, so that the community would have a view into the company. And that's why from the start, we made it, we made the handbook public.
Okay, so it's in spirit of open source philosophy.
Yes.
Right, but still, 9 out of 10 founders I talked to expressed a strong preference, especially here in Bay Area, toward keeping their entire team in-house. In your opinion, why are startups more often than not opposed against going remote?
With in-house, you mean co-located?
Yes, like having an office, everyone sits together in an office, having a kitchenette. And that kind
because we do almost everything in-house. For example, we don't outsource software development. And I could go into that, but that isn't your question. Your question is, why do you think other founders prefer being co-located? Well, I think one of the reasons is it works really well if you're all in the same room. If you're a team of 7 people, I think nothing beats being in the same office. The speed of iteration, the information sharing it can just be very, very high. And I think based on that positive experience, people keep using the same model. However, I think as the company gets bigger, I think it's harder and harder to get benefit out of being co-located. Like, it's nice if you're all in the same room. It's not so nice if you're all on the same floor. It's not so nice if you're all in the same building. It's not so nice if you're all in the same city. Like, as you get bigger, the benefits are reduced. Well, the benefits of working in public channels and writing things down, those benefits tend to accumulate. So I think there might be maybe they learned a lesson from the beginning that doesn't apply anymore to the company at scale. But you should ask them and not me.
Where do you think is that this threshold, between like being really efficient if everyone is collocated and when there is like really no big difference already between being distributed and collocated? Like the size of the company, I mean.
I think all in the same room is superior. I think all on the same floor, so a couple of rooms, 35 people, I think it's a wash. I think either could work. I think as soon as you're on multiple floors, so 100 people plus, I think remote, my sense is better.
Okay, so it's like between 30 and 50 people, maybe, when you stop fitting into one floor.
But of course, it really depends on the culture, the kind of work you're doing. For example, if you do something with hardware, if you make a physical product, for example, it makes a lot more sense to be co-located.
Okay, that makes sense. So what kind of advice would you give to the founders who at this very moment are like hesitating which strategy to choose? Like start hiring in-house so everyone is in the office or going remote?
So your three jobs as a founder of a company is to make sure there's a clear strategy that is the right one and that everyone understands, that there's enough money and that you get the best people to work on it. Getting the best people, it would be a big coincidence if they're all located in where you're starting your company. So I don't think it makes sense to try to limit your search for those people to just where you coincidentally tend to be. I think it makes sense to try to find a broader set of people. And there's very few people wanting to move for a new job. I think meet the people where they are now and make it easy to join your company.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So if you don't mind, I want to be asking the usual how it all started question. I actually listened to some of the previous Pick Your Brain streams and know that like with many other companies, the initial decision to go remote has been rather spontaneous. What is interesting though, is if you remember that exact moment when the distributed team philosophy became intentional.
It was, so we've been intentional about like designing for remote for a very long time. All the things we put in place to facilitate kind of the social interaction. So we've been intentional about it. Saying like, we are remote and we will not, it's very unlikely we'll change it. It took a long while, I think, and it never was this once decision. It kind of happened gradually. And we think it's really important to keep an open mind about things and to be willing to change your approach when you face new data. And many of our investors said, look, it's all nice, it's all remote, but you'll hit a wall. At some point it won't scale. So we're like, okay, we'll keep an open mind about it. And as we grew to all the usual barriers, 150, 200 people, 500 people, and the model is still scaling, I think it wears off and gradually you realize that there's not any person limit to it. Of course, we have to keep making the model better, but we now believe that there's no reason to change for now. But it can become a dogma, and like remote is not one of our values. We'll do whatever works.
So from the company building, from the business processes building perspective, can we like dig a little bit deeper into the rationale with the decision towards building a fully remote workforce? Like, how do you kind of justify this approach as compared to like all others to you? Like, why do you think this is superior for GitLab and maybe?
Yeah, why it works better for us. One thing we mentioned already, and that is if you scale rapidly, it works if you work asynchronously. We have a lot of people onboarding every single day. Sometimes we make 16 hires a week now. If you have all those people asking the same questions, that's a big burden on your organization. The onboarding issue now contains over 150 items. So if you have 16 people joining times 150 things that they have to ask, plus 2,000 pages in the handbook, of which, let's say 200 pages are relevant. So you got 500 questions per hire. Let's say 10 new hires, that's 5,000 questions being asked. that's a lot of questions being asked. That is all time that could be spent on something else. And what people universally report at GitLab is that people are so open to answering questions. And I always think, yes, that's because we address 95% of them up front. So there's a lot fewer questions left and people are more open to answering them.
Okay, oh, this is interesting because this addresses one of the least efficient processes in every company, right? The recruitment.
The onboarding, you mean?
Sorry, the onboarding, yeah, as part of, human resources process. So again, like if we keep talking a little bit about the early days, what were the things, like maybe 3 things that didn't go as expected early on?
I think it's a continual struggle to write things down. I just had a meeting with one of my reports, and we use an agenda and we write things down in that. And I now have a CEO shadow, and she follows. This is the first day. It's the first day of the program, and this report sent me a link on Slack, DM'd me. Now suddenly the shadow cannot follow along because we work in our agenda. It's people are all into messaging. Like the natural state of things is for people to say something, to DM someone instead of working in a structured format. Mm-hmm. It's just unnatural, and it takes constant reinforcing to do that, to have it written down. And I'm like a broken record about this, and I'm trying to lead by example.
Mm-hmm. So it's all about like self-discipline of every person, like not forget to put things in writing, not forget to report.
Yeah, the unnatural, it's unnatural and unintuitive maybe is a better word. You have to kind of do that, force yourself to do that unintuitive thing for the benefit of your future self and for your coworkers.
Okay. Well, we had this morning, we had our weekly call in our company, and we are also distributed. We have like 4 different locations. So, and people were complaining because we have like these weekly calls and we have product demos happening like every 2 weeks. And like people from business department, they said, it's like, it's really, most of it is irrelevant to us. We feel a little bit that it's a waste of time. Maybe we can find some more efficient format. So I don't know, do you have any advice for us in this case?
Well, the first thing you should do is make all meetings in the company optional. The second thing you should do is encourage people to not pay attention during meetings, but work on other stuff. So you can join a call, and it's totally okay to do email. Just mute yourself so that people don't have to listen to your keyboard, but don't force people to sit through something that might not be of benefit. The third thing is...
You realize this is very counterintuitive to like most managers, what you say.
Yeah, but most managers want to, maybe, I don't know. I'm not talking about most managers, but I think it's very counterintuitive to hire people. Mm-hmm. And then for their brains and for them being a manager of one and then dictating to them how they should spend their time. I think that's a very strange thing. If there's value for people and things, they'll do it. If there's no value, they won't do it. It's up to them to produce the result, and they should be managing their time. You don't want to get into time management of someone. Mm-hmm. The fourth thing you can do, or the first thing, I'm not sure what number I'm at, but if you do a product demo, why don't you record that up front and have that linked from the agenda so that people can prepare that. The people that are interested in seeing the product demo, they can consume that up front. Your meeting is very valuable time because it takes coordination to have everyone in the same meeting. And you should use what's special about having everyone together at the same time, namely interaction. Interaction, super valuable. Everyone understands that a meeting has a different vibe than going back and forth over text messages or discussions or an issue. So use it for what it's good at, interaction. So at GitLab, very many meetings have a presentation, but you cannot present it. So this morning was a good example. We had our compliance team. They prepared a presentation. It was a really good one. It consisted of 10 slides. not a single slide was presented. We just started with Q&A, and we talked for, I think, 22 minutes in the end of a meeting that for the maximum should run about 25 minutes. So we filled everything with interaction. And if people don't understand the slide, they can ask, like, hey, can you present that slide? Because I didn't get it. You didn't even have to say that. You just asked, can you present that slide? Mm-hmm. But for the product demo, there's no interaction during the demo. So you can just record that. And then great, because this morning I was downstairs on a recumbent bike and I could have watched that. And I cannot do a meeting from there because there's no cell phones allowed in our fitness center, which is totally reasonable. But I can watch a product demo with my headphones on. Plus, I can speed it up because I can listen faster than most people can talk. And then you'll find that goes for most people. So I can speed it up 1.5x, 2x. I did Ben Horowitz in inauguration speech at Columbia University at 50% extra, faster. So you allow people to time shift, you allow people to shift it up, you allow people to think about it a bit before they ask their question. Superior to just running it in this very expensive coordinated meeting time that should be used for interaction.
Cool. So in other words, like the rule of thumb is record everything which doesn't imply interaction in advance, and then confine the meeting time only to Q&A, only like discussion around this material.
Yep.
Okay.
Meetings
I'm
are
definitely going to try it.
Cool.
Right. So going back to like general experience with remote teams. So there are we already named some of other most famous examples like Zapier or Basecamp. Are you familiar with like their methodologies? Like how do they approach management, recruitment, meetings, and so on? And are there specifically some things you disagree with them on, like you prefer to do differently?
Yeah. I had a dinner with a bunch of companies about all remote, and the Zapier people talked a lot there. And I must say, I can't remember anything we disagreed. I think we disagreed about one thing, but I don't remember it. So I'm sorry about that. I think Basecamp, I don't necessarily disagree, but we have done things different. So maybe we don't disagree, but we've done something different. We raised venture capital, which puts us on this treadmill. I think they call it the time bomb. And I haven't regretted that. And I think both are valid approaches to building a company. And I very much respect them for like running a cash flow business where they kind of turn a profit. They don't have this time bomb. And before I came to the Valley, I said to my wife, like, stop me if I want to raise external capital, because I was very aware of the downsides. Mm-hmm. It does allow you to grow faster, and it does allow you to have a shot at becoming a public company and hiring really great people to help you. So I do think for the companies that have a shot at making it to a public company, VC is a very interesting route. And it decreases your odds of success, and it means more pressure to monetize and less freedom as a business owner. But it's better than I expected when I came to the US.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting because we had a big discussion about fundraising, like whether we should raise a round or not, because we happened to bootstrap like for first about 2 years. But at the end, we decided to take the investors' money, and I don't regret that. I must confess. Right. So next question is really 7 questions for the price of 1. Based on hundreds of conversations with other founders, I tried to systematize the most common objections against having a remote team. What I ended up as a working title of 7 deadly sins of remote. Namely, these are IP theft or hoarding, communication gaps, time zone difference, lack of employees' motivation and loyalty, weak cultural link, distractions associated with working from home, and new employee onboarding challenges. I think we have addressed the last one already, but it would be really cool if we can, really briefly address like each of those concerns, like IP theft or hoarding. What do you think about that?
So people are afraid that if you allow people to work from home, they have the company IP on their laptops and they steal it or something. What is the precise concern?
Yeah, no, exactly, because you have no control like over what they are doing with this information. So I don't know, they can plug a flash drive or they can send it to someone,
Okay, well, I think most companies nowadays allow people to travel with a laptop because they have to frequently travel and you want them to be effective on the road. So I don't think there's a big difference there. Now, if you have a lab and you don't allow anybody outside of the lab and you've plugged all those USB ports, that makes sense. Like then you're more secure. But I think for 95% of the companies I work with, people have laptops and are allowed to bring them outside office premises. So I don't think there's a big difference there.
How about IP hoarding? Like if someone says, you know what, I just think you should pay me like 3 times more. Otherwise, I'm not going to, share this part of the code with the rest of the team.
Well, I think you can have that. I don't see the difference between a co-located company and in general at GitLab, we write more down so that people, not to make people miss it, well, to make sure you don't have to tap someone on the back to get information. And I think that's a great practice. And I think remote helps with that because you can't tap people on the shoulder. You want to optimize for not having to do that. And you get this culture of writing things down, which I think is super helpful in making sure you that no one person is the bottleneck.
Okay, communication gaps.
Yeah, it's such a broad subject. I'm not sure what people are concerned with. Of course, communication is hard. Like that's the hardest thing about running a company. I don't think it's harder in a remote company per se. I think maybe it's I find myself asking more to people like, how are you feeling? How are you? Like, are you red, green, or yellow? Like, are you happy in your job? It's a bit harder to infer. So I think you have to be a bit more explicit about asking about it.
Time zone difference.
Yeah, the bane of our existence. It's the end of distance, but not of time zone differences, and it's a big problem. And there's no perfect solutions. Recording is a great way to time shift to allow people to consume it when it's ready for them. And it also can be an advantage. Like we need around this follow the sun support for like customer questions for GitLab.com site reliability, and this way people can work during normal hours instead of during the night, which I think is great. But that doesn't mean that, for example, our APAC team doesn't get to join our normal company-wide calls, and that's a big disadvantage.
Lack of motivation and loyalty.
I think there's, we'll later talk about distractions with working from home. I'll take that as the motivation one. Loyalty.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Loyalty, I think there's no reason for loyalty.
We can merge this with culture. Yeah, just to.
There's no reason for loyalty to be different. I don't like the word loyalty because loyal is almost if you leave a company, you're not loyal. I think people are free agents and they should do whatever is better. If we're talking about retention, our retention is 90% year over year. In our industry, average has a churn of about 18%. So we're almost at twice as good as industry average. I think part of that is people can follow, for example, their partner. If their partner needs to move, they can keep their job. But I also think it's because people hopefully enjoy working at GitLab more than other companies.
How about culture? It's like the most frequent thing I hear from founders, like as an objection. So we want everyone to be in the office because we care about culture.
Yeah, I would say make sure that you know exactly what you mean by culture. And I've seen people use culture as an excuse to hire people that look similar to themselves and not have a very diverse team. So be mindful of that. If you talk about, we see culture maybe as sharing our values. And with your values, you can be much more, I think you don't enforce them to all being in the same office. You enforce them to who you give compliments to, who you give bonuses, who you promote, who you hire, and who you let go. That's how you reinforce culture. So, for example, today we had someone proposing a promotion, but there was no document that linked to our values, and then that promotion will not happen. Every promotion, we specify how this person showed that they live our values. And we do that with everything. Last year we had 3,400 messages that thanked another person. 80% of the company left one, 90% of the company was thanked for something. And we link those to our values to using emojis with our values on them. So I think you can have very strong culture as in shared values. Our values are better described, more known in the company now than when we were 7 people. If you hope to get your values shared to putting same people in the same room, I think you're up for a huge disappointment, because if you grow more than twice every year, you dilute things really, really fast. You dilute it faster than you can increase the concentration. I think what this might also hint at, weak cultural links, is a lack of empathy and social bonds in the organization. So this is something I think you have to design or you have to almost engineer into the company so that you take time to get to know each other better. I think there's a big benefit to knowing each other outside of a direct work context. So what we do at GitLab 4 times a week, there's a breakout call with a group of people. You talk about life outside of work. We have coffee breaks or coffee chats. We schedule 25 minutes with another person just to get to know them a bit better. We have a travel stipend where if you visit other team members, we'll pay for that. And there's a couple of more examples, but we spend great time and effort making sure these things happen. And you get that water cooler conversation. Actually, you get better than water cooler conversation because you don't talk about the weather or the sports team, but are things that are more important and personal to you.
In other words, you need to invest in culture proactively.
I think culture is vague. I think you need to invest in creating social bonds and social trust between people in the company by having them engage in an informal setting.
Okay. How about distractions when working from home?
Yeah, those are certainly present. I think they're hardest on people who have kids.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the benefit, the upside is also the biggest for those, because they're very flexible with their time and they can be there for their loved ones when they need to be there. At GitLab, in our values, we say family and friends first, work second, and we try to live that. And people, for example, people don't want to work out from home, but they want to work from a co-working space or they want to rent an office somewhere, we'll pay for that. We don't force you to work from home. And everyone has to figure out how they incorporate the rest of their life into their day.
Okay. This is the next question I really want to ask you. We've mentioned some tools already, like Slack, like Zoom, like others. So we are all builders here, right? Give or take. More often than not, we face the situation when we say ourselves, I wish I have some more time so that I could build a tool to fix this. So can you recall the last time you had this kind of thoughts? And what was the problem you wanted to get solved this way?
So Erica, who just joined us, the first CEO shadow, is watching the stream. So hi, Erica. And she will help with documenting things that I think we should document, but I don't have the time to do the entire write-up. So I think that's the personal kind of benefit I'll get from having this CEO shadow program. We have at GitLab, we have a huge product scope. So we want to make sure that of every kind of category that we have in our product, and there's about 80 of them, that we know what the maturity is, what the associated issues are, etc., who the responsible people are, who's the UX person for this, who's the product manager for this. And that took a lot of organizing, and we automated a lot of that. But in the end, it was like Mark Punsak, our head of product, who had to do that. So we hired a person just to automate that work. So automation, and where needed, we'll hire someone.
Okay, startup idea, everyone. So let's talk a little bit about people. So I appreciate the picture that you have chosen for the background. So this is about 90% of GitLab team, right? Can you tell a little bit about like where the picture was taken, what was happening there?
Yeah, one of the things we do to form social bonds is we have our contribute event every 9 months, and we fly everyone into a location. This was in Cape Town, South Africa. I think we're about 300 people at the time. We're now 500 people. And what we do is we don't lock people into a conference room and make them watch presentations. There's a closing event, and there's an opening and a closing event. But most of the time we spend either on excursions, going out and exploring the site where we're at, or in an unconference setting where people in the company propose a subject they want to talk about, and you can join whatever you like to join. And it's been a great way to get people to form these kind of informal connections.
So I believe people on this photo are not just developers. There are salespeople here, customer support, HR, marketing, and so on and so forth. So does it, from your experience, depend on a specific domain? How easy is it for a person to transition to a remote workspace? Any jobs, any types of jobs that fit better for a remote setup, and types of jobs that don't fit that good for remote?
Yeah, I do think engineers have a bit of an advantage. They're more used to the tooling that is used. And everything has their pros and cons. Like for salespeople, they're highly empathetic. So people said remote won't work because of that. But if you look in practice, most sales teams are kind of remote because they have to be near their customers. And guess what? You can have a lot of empathy over the video call as well. So it didn't matter that much. People say it's hard to do in marketing because it's such a highly creative profession that somehow you need a whiteboard or something. It's what, if you have a Google Doc, it's like a whiteboard where everyone has a pencil and everyone can contribute at the same time. So I don't think that flies. I do think there's, we all struggle with different things. Our salespeople are still very used to direct messaging people instead of working in a public channel. It's a hard habit to break, and I can see how that's hard. Our marketing people took a while to embrace remote, but for example, now they're doing all their work in GitLab issue boards and issue trackers. So they really went from kind of being a bit behind to kind of being at the forefront, and that's. So it's never perfect. There's always pros and cons, but I don't think that there's a certain department that cannot do remote. It's counterintuitive, and it has setbacks, but we haven't found like, hey, this is a department, you cannot do it. Now, that being said, everyone at GitLab is like highly educated knowledge worker who's proficient in written and spoken English. Like we're not, there are companies that have a completely different composition of people working at their company. So that might make a big difference.
So in this regard, how do you know when you interview a candidate that this person is going to be a right fit for GitLab? Can you share some interview questions, like some insider tricks for that?
Yeah. So do you mean a right fit for GitLab or a right fit for remote work?
Both. I think in many cases this is both.
So we don't interview for remote work. We haven't found that it matters very much if people have done it before. We do ask people if they're open to it, because people have to do things differently. They have to be open to that. But there's nothing that predicts success by just remote itself. What does predict success is being a manager of one. So making sure that you can allocate your own time and set your own priorities. That is a good leading indicator. If you depend on your manager to look on your screen every now and then to make sure you're not on Facebook, you're not going to have a good time at GitLab, because your manager won't do that and you'll just be ineffective. But as long as people can manage their own time, I think remote is fine. And we've had a lot of people for which this was the first remote company, and it's never led to any problems.
Self-discipline. So that's like what you're looking for in people. Or it's not the right.
I don't, look, I'm one of. If you put a bowl of M&Ms in front of me, I will eat it, even though it's bad for my health. I should finish the salad I started on. So I'm not the most disciplined person in the world. So I think being able to prioritize is really important. Like, know what's important, what's not important, and make progress towards the important things. I think that's what management is about, and that's also what being as a manager of one is about.
Okay, I'm not sure how much time we have left. So last question. Last question is about the future and the impact. Let's say we have borrowed a time machine and traveled into the future, 20 years from now. There is one guy in YC, Paul Buchheit. He likes this kind of exercise. He's always asking this question, 20 years from now, the year is 2039. Remote work paradigm has taken over the world. What are the things that are most strikingly different from now? Businesses, human behavior, political, cultural things, anything. What do you think about that?
I think one of the striking things will be that remote has become the default for new companies, but that co-located companies have a super hard time changing their model. So it's almost like they have to go extinct. And they have to be replaced by new companies that are all remote. I think the commute will look much better. Like, every single remote worker is a person that doesn't have to come into the city and cause gridlock. I do think there's even more events and meetups. So you'll have a lot of people that do things like, on my background, get all together, but do it very deliberately. Don't come into the office every day for half an hour of water cooler talk, but just say, hey, these days I'm going to spend with people together. So I think we'll see a proliferation of that. I think the people who make the microphones and the webcams are going to have a field day, because those will get much more important. Like, not having a proper internet and webcam and microphone will be the same as coming in to work with a hole in your shirt or something. It's just not done. And it's surprising to see how many people still don't have earphones. Anyway, I won't bore you with that. And I think one of the big things will be is that income will be a bit better distributed, where now everything is accumulating to San Francisco and a tiny bit to New York and London and Berlin. You'll see that it gets dissipated more, and that you no longer have to live close to a big metro area to have a really well-paying job, and that those smaller, those non-metro, big metro communities get to benefit from the additional income that's coming there. I think especially as we see a bigger difference between what the top earners are earning versus the average earner, I think that's spreading that wealth is gonna become increasingly important.
Well, let's wait and see. I hope that, you know, I also share this opinion that remote work and this kind of different way to build the workplace can have much more profound impact on economy and society than we can see now. And it's really cool that already today, companies like GitLab, they pioneer this, they open this new dimension, and they are like a living proof, you know, that you can build a super successful world-leading business, having like everyone literally like 100% distributed, but not sitting in one nice glass shiny office with your logo at the top. So thank you very much for that, Sid. And yeah, looking forward to learning about, you know, your next steps and next great achievements.
Awesome. Thanks for the interview. Really appreciate it.
Great interview. Thank you. Have a good one.